I ran across this in my travels through the publishing domain, and it's just a little article. It was entitled "Crying Out for Justice." It was in a UU World newsletter, and it reminds us. Oops, pardon me a second. Let me get this thing unhooked here. I had a vision once of doing this. Just stand here for 5 or 10 minutes and not say anything. Just to see what would happen. Curious. Did it once. We had a little church in Nashville, Tennessee, called Gentle Spaces, little living room ministry. I decided to try that one evening, just show up and get everybody in a circle and just go quiet. Coming apart for a while. And so we sat there for about 5 minutes almost, which is an eternity when there's a different level of expectation going on. And I felt something touching my hand like that. And I opened my eyes and Light was handing me a little booklet with different prayers and meditations in it. And what she was responding to was her sense that I just didn't have anything to say, and she was going to provide me with something to say. And I thought how we cherish saying things. And we do. We do. In very real ways. We open our hearts and minds to each other, and if we can pay attention and receive the moment without a lot of predetermined necessity for it to be a certain thing, we're just open to whatever wine wants to fill our cup in the moment, it gets pretty rich, ultimately. And that's kind of how this came into my life. I've been working diligently at that capacity to learn to look way beyond my old wine and to welcome into my life new wine that provides with new insights and new meaning, and at the same time it invites a lot of new revelation. It brings along with it a lot of peace and serenity and clarity and understanding. And I played with this for a while. The title of this little thing was Crying Out for Justice. Crying Out for Justice. It says the world is perfect as it is. That's the insight of the spiritual eye. Everything just as it is. No judgment, no second thought, just this. And we do work in that arena here. I have a little argument with the word perfect. I prefer inevitable. That's just my addiction to recognizing that everything going down is a result of a causal effect that was put in motion by something we said or did or thought at some time, God knows when. And so perfect, I don't know about perfect. I don't know what's perfect for you until I know what your criteria for perfect is. But I do know that everything we all experience in common that we call our lives together is inevitable, because there's a law that governs. There's a law of creative principle, a law of sowing and reaping. You do this, you get that. In fact, I did my best to remember that the only really helpful observations that I shared with my children were those times when I remembered to let them know that there's a strong connection between the experiences they had and the choices they made. And that if they wanted to have a different kind of experience, they might want to consider making different kinds of choices. That's the way the game goes. As you sow, so shall you reap. I think it was Aristotle that suggested that God is the God of laws, the law of creation, the law of inevitability. So if you sow this, you get that. That's just how it is. None of us have, well, maybe some of you do. Don't let me take your share of it, but I know I don't at this point have nearly enough observatory energy or capacity to be able to notice or to notate all the different causal events that went into creating this moment. Think about this moment for a moment and try to, see if you could figure out and calculate all the different choices each of us made to create this moment. And now this one. And now this one. Just, it's all going on like that. And if we get back far enough from it, as the creative principle can, God can, we could see all that and say, yes, absolutely inevitable. It couldn't be any other way. It just is. It's perfect, isn't it? And it is. That being said, there's no judgment, there's no second thought regarding this moment, just this. And at this very same time, it needs work. I don't think any of us would argue that the inevitability that shows up as a result of creative principle operating out of cause and effect can bring to us, I would say, the need or the necessity or the experience of bearing witness to human beings being with each other in ways that challenge the hell out of our capacity to keep our hearts open and celebrating. The events that took place in another state, Arizona, I believe it was, just the other day when some lost soul decided somehow, and I know this, as sure as God made little green apples, I know this, that when he was performing that act of shooting 6 or 7 people, killing them and wounding another bunch of folks, somewhere in his lostness, it made absolute sense. Somewhere it seemed to be the thing he had to do. Figure that out. Figure that out. Which is why, I'm sure, recognizing the human capacity for that kind of lostness, Jesus said that in the world you will have tribulation. Put it in the bank. Stuff is going to happen. It challenges hell out of our humanity. In the world you will have tribulation. But he said, be of good cheer. I've overcome the world. And it certainly wasn't by any particular supernatural energy that he put into the world to turn it into an unfolding experience that was totally glorified his preferencing system for how it unfolds. I don't know about you, but hanging out on a cross with nails in my hand is not my idea of a very nice way to go out of here. So his idea, overcoming the world, had nothing to do with changing the nature of the events, the form and the circumstance of his life. It had to do totally with how he embraced them as they unfolded, and he embraced them with a magnificent capacity to have compassion and understanding for every moment of it, and a willingness to surrender completely to the will of his Father. Not my will, but thy will be done. Forgive them, Father, what they do. And the very moment we have that, the very moment we create that is the fulcrum point of a relationship we have with all beings, and maintain it with impeccable fidelity, then even with somebody who goes into a place and shoots and shoots and shoots and kills, even that being we can bring into the circle of our compassion. Forgive him, Father, he knows not what he's doing. Boy, that's hard, isn't it? That's the hardest. We've been given that task. That's the other eye. And that's the part of the world that the rest of this little piece speaks to. At the very same time, in all that perfection, it needs work. It being this life experience we're having. Lord, it needs work. That's the other eye. Starving children, oppressions, exploitations of every sort, greed, hatred, endless certainties, all leading to small and great hurts. The suffering world crying out for justice, for mercy, for some action. All of that crying out for what? For an experience that we can tuck away into our happiness pocket. An experience that we can relate to and find our spirit elevated. Found this looking at it and then being aware of a sense of happiness, a sense of happiness. And there we go. And that's coming. It's coming slow, but it's on its way. This little article I read in Positive News. Anybody ever run across Positive News? It's a little newspaper printed out of Ithaca, New York. Somebody dropped it on my desk. It says, happiness as a right. We talk a lot these days about rights. Happiness is hot right now. Over the past year and a half, more than 27,000 books and articles have been written about the subject. Last November, more than 800 people attended the 5th International Gross National Happiness Conference. Is that beautiful? Gross National Happiness Conference in Brazil. In Seattle, where I live, the author Jake DeGraff, we have organized the Seattle Area Happiness Initiative. Happiness research shows that our society could use some profound changes. This past June, I attended the first Gross National Happiness held in the United States. It was in Burlington, Vermont. And speaker after speaker suggested that happiness was to be found not in our devotion to an ever-expanding gross domestic product, but in understanding that the best things in life aren't things. Did you get that? The best things in life aren't things. Here are a few of the highlights as I saw them. Karma Shatim, a government official from Bhutan. You know where Bhutan is? A little country about the size of Vermont that sticks up there on the top of India, just between Tibet and India. Bhutan, it's a harbinger. It's like the robin in spring. It's a harbinger of happiness in terms of a culture being so imbued with a different idea of being, with a different idea of what it's going to commit its natural resources to, that it challenges the hell out of anything that we might come up with in the moment. But from Bhutan, where the goal of gross national happiness is enshrined in the Constitution. That experience offered a fascinating look at how gross national happiness indicators influence government policies there. They actually went ahead and did it. They said, here are some indicators of the degree to which our country is essentially populated with people who are happy or not. Are they happy or not? Let's take a survey. And they created this whole list of criteria. We're happy if, we're not happy if. And they used this in their government. They checked out. They wanted to find out how many people living in Bhutan are happy and how many aren't and why. Isn't that amazing? I mean, God, what minds think about something like that? That it would actually mean something to determine that the people living under your economic and political system were happy. And if they weren't, why not? Why not? Major policies in Bhutan are subjected to screening tools that assess 23 indicators of happiness. What is the degree to which this initiative will accommodate, among things like work-life balance, income distribution, social connection, and access to nature? In Bhutan, it doesn't fly. Initiatives don't fly until they accommodate those kinds of criteria and accommodate them at a level that supports and nurtures them. Wow. When the issue of Bhutan's joining the World Trade Organization, you familiar with those folks? They have a massive reputation for being, don't ask. They've got some enormous karma built up in their organization. But how the World Trade Organization was judged, when it was judged with these criteria, the criteria of Bhutan, screening tools, how is the work-life balance affected? How does WTO impact on income distribution, social connections, access to nature? How does it do all those things? When it was judged with these criteria, it failed, and Bhutan has not joined the World Trade Organization. Yeah, amen, brother, sister. Ron Coleman, who developed Canada's. Now, Canada is a little closer to us in Bhutan. Some of you are aware of the fact that Canada is just north of us. If you go north far enough, you'll find Canada. They've developed something they call a genuine progress indicator. I love it, man. Okay, you go ahead for the phony progress, but we're interested in genuine. Described a new system of national accounts in Bhutan. The world's first that subtracts costs of resource loss, and other externalities from its national income. In other words, it's like we just had this thing called the blowout down there in the Gulf of Mexico. Billions of dollars were spent to bring that under control and to clean up the beaches and that kind of thing in the water. And those billions of dollars were added to the gross domestic product. Maybe that's why they call it gross. You stop and think about that for a moment. All the money invested in that was considered an addendum to the economy. Every gallon of oil that they pump out of the ground in Bhutan is counted as a resource loss. And so they've got this little scoreboard going, how much we got now, how much we spent, and they keep track of that, and they call it a loss, not a gain. In the U.S., many of the enormous costs of the Gulf of Mexico oil catastrophe will actually be added to GDP. Coleman also explained how the concept of gross national happiness is being used in the education of Bhutanese children, so they will not be trapped by the lure of materialism. Oh yeah, that's nice, let's keep our budgets balanced and that kind of thing, but what's the gross national happiness? What's that about? And our kids, can you imagine our kids being imbued with that from the very beginning? Susan Andrews, an American living in Brazil, showed a video depicting how Brazil is now using GNH surveys in cities and schools, universities, and businesses. She is teaching happiness skills to young students in the slums and finds the process effective in reducing violence. And I'll bet you somewhere that played a role in the situation that occurred in our country just a day or so ago in Arizona. There's something going on there. You got a very, very, very unhappy human being who chose insane ways of responding to it. Happiness surveys consistently rank Northern European countries at the top, with Denmark at the head. Lene Kickenborg Christensen, a conference participant who is a Danish grad student, offered some reasons why Denmark is #1 in happiness. What's going on there? The Danes' strong social safety net, including excellent free health care, excellent free higher education, and generous unemployment insurance, means they feel less need to get the highest paying jobs, for example, and can choose those where the work is most satisfying. They don't have to sweat the other stuff. I feel secure for me and for my children, so I can follow my passion, she added. I don't have to relegate everything to the means of an economic concern and consideration. I feel taken care of. I feel acknowledged as a citizen of my country. And my acknowledgement includes things like the hardcore things of having enough to eat and having a job that I can work and having health care when I need it, and education if that's called for, and. Child care, for example, in those Eastern European countries or those Western European countries, if you're going to work in a child care situation, you got to go to school for 2 years to qualify. You need 2 years of child care training to get a job as a child care person. Far out. I feel secure for me and my children so I can follow my passion. The evidence at Burlington's conference demonstrates that happy societies are those that share wealth. There's a criteria. Happy societies are those societies that share wealth, that reduce work time, consume carefully, and take good care of the environment. Those are values that are anathemas to much of the political domain that we have now in this country. Those ideas of reduced work time or careful consumption or taking care of the environment. The first Gross National Happiness Conference is an important step in that direction, and I say hooray for it. What do you think? I think so. I invite you to make some noise in that direction if you want. And we can kind of relate that back to the season we just went through from Joseph Moore's lyrics. Silent night, holy night. That it might be so, and soon, that the nights be silent and holy. Can you imagine? Let's catch a flash of Christmas future now. Picture every last person on the planet celebrating the sacred nature of the whole creation, including themselves. Every heart serene and peaceful, every eye sparkling with the radiance of the awakened state. Peace on earth, goodwill to all. You don't have to buy in, it's just there for you. That's come full circle from a radical vision and the illumined heart mind of a fearless prophet to the fervent prayer of billions of grateful celebrants. The Christ Mass is relentless in its demand for awakened evolution. It paints a fearless portrait of possibility that brings inspired tears to all who open their hearts to its magnificent obsession. Peace on earth, goodwill to all. Nobody's cold or hungry. Nobody's naked or homeless. Health care and education are recognized as universal rights, as is right livelihood and a safe and nurturing work environment for everyone needing a little green energy. War and crime and terrorism, all forms of violence and abuse have succumbed to the planetary embrace of an enlightened code of conscious conduct and are no longer options in the arena of human affairs. The Earth Mother is considered sacred. Her land and trees and water and atmosphere and biodiversity are treated with our deepest wisdom and utmost sensitivity. Voluntary simplicity is the dominant lifestyle. All children and elders are respected and cherished and cared for with impeccable integrity. The role of parenting is honored as the planet's most important activity. And gender equality is taken for granted. Glass ceilings have long been shattered. Prejudices and bigotry are found only in the museum of the most egregious historical ignorance. Commerce and economics is practiced as if Mother Nature and people mattered most. The Defense Department has been downsized to one musical unit mobilized every 4th of July to honor Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Barney Fife is in charge of all law enforcement. All political decisions are made at a grassroots level the second Tuesday of every month at the Thirsty Monk. Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton have been freeze-dried, now stand uncharacteristically silent in the Capitol Rotunda, welcoming pilgrims touring the Smithsonian Institute of Amusing Political Anachronisms. The Donald was successfully revived from cryogenic suspension, but died of acute mammon withdrawal syndrome soon after discovering that his flagship, Atlantic City Casino, had been converted into the world's largest Goodwill store during his 50-year deep freeze. An elderly widow made headlines in the Wall Street Journal when she donated her last $1.86 to the Betty Ford Foundation for Recovering Capitalists. Ted Turner's recent contribution of $27 gazillion to underwrite this year's federal budget was briefly noted on page 38. Forgive us, Father, for we have grinned. Really now? Is all that truly so far off the charts? I think not. A little shift in the wind, a little waking up here and there, Shazam, critical mass. So what's it going to take to shove enough of us down the road of awakening, to tilt the planetary mindset in the direction of irresistible spiritual renaissance, where we practice gross national happiness as way of life? I leave it to you. I leave it to you. Thank you for being with me in the journey. God love you.